Well, good afternoon to you. It is 5:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. We'll make sense of the Biden family's business deals, the crime. Coming up with Mike McCormick at 5:30, former stenographer for then Vice President Joe Biden for 6 years. He got to see the Bidens in action. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Before we move into the censorship of the American public at the hands of the Biden administration, let's take a phone call from Walter in Gaithersburg. He wants to weigh in on the transgender issue. There was a big hearing today in the House on that subject. Walter on line one. Good afternoon, Walter. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Yeah, good evening. I wanted to make my comment is a suggestion for truth tellers like you that when you do stories like this child mutilation surgery,
yes,
why can't we somebody that tells us, because I thought I heard 2 countries have just stopped doing this overseas, in Europe or something.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get an expert. What's going on overseas? And the same idea is add a person who can tell you what's going on overseas for like the Dominion voting machines, the voter fraud, any topic like this. Give us an opinion from some country or somebody overseas. My theory is it's all part of George Soros trying to destroy America.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just another one of his things trying to do it.
Yeah, this is an excellent point. What are other countries doing when it comes to this gender insanity? And the answer to your question is that European countries are nowhere near as crazy as we are, and their flirtations with crazy have subsided. Places like the UK, Sweden, Switzerland, they are backing off on all of this mutilation of children because they've seen the horrific consequences of it and apparently have learned something from that experience as they have so many victims. But in the United States, we're doubling down on insanity. And to your point, Walter, and I'm glad you're making this today, this did come up in the hearing today. This was a subject of conversation during that congressional hearing today, that the United States is in full-blown lunacy and that Europe is backing off of destroying these kids. So it's a really relevant piece of this conversation. And I'm glad you brought it up, Walter. Thank you.
Just a quick question, though. Do you know if we can sue the mainstream media for all their lies about ivermectin medicine that really is better than the vaccines? Can we sue them for all their lies?
It's a good question. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not here to give you legal advice on this. But every time I see a lawsuit against one of these legacy news outlets for being scumbags, especially when the good guy wins, I cheer. So, Walter, if you end up pursuing something like that and you win, I'll be cheering for you the whole time. Thank you, Walter. Really appreciate your call today. Let me talk about. Actually, I'm glad Walter brought up COVID. Because that segues very nicely into our next topic, which is the extent to which the Biden administration has been censoring conversations in the United States around issues like the one Walter just brought up. Congressman Jim Jordan today released a series of tweets. Do we call them tweets anymore? It's called X now, right? X? Although the URL still says twitter.com, so I don't know what to say. But I'll say tweets because that's coherent. He put out a series of tweets today about the Facebook files. You remember the Twitter files. That was how much the government had its hand in Twitter prior to Elon Musk's purchase of it and to censor the American public. Now Jim Jordan is releasing documents that have been turned over to him by Facebook and Instagram. Now, they have been threatening to hold Mark Zuckerberg in contempt of Congress. That is, the House Republicans have. And unless they start coughing up some of this information. And sure enough, it's finally happening. They are turning over some information, and that's a good thing because it's revealing the immense coercion that the Biden administration has been wielding over Facebook in order to shut you down, in order to keep you from getting access to information. Here's what Jim Jordan writes today. Never before released internal documents subpoenaed by the Judiciary Committee proved that Facebook and Instagram censored posts and changed their content moderation policies because of unconstitutional pressure from the Biden White House. During the first half of 2021, social media companies like Facebook faced tremendous pressure from the Biden White House, both publicly and privately, to crack down on alleged, quote, misinformation. In April of 2021, a Facebook employee circulated an email for Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg and COO Sheryl Sandberg, writing, quote, "We are facing continued pressure from external stakeholders, including the Biden White House," end quote, to remove posts. Let me read this more directly because there's a screenshot here that Congressman Jim Jordan shares. It's an email directly to both Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg. It says, "Mark, Sheryl, we are seeking your guidance on whether to take more aggressive action against certain vaccine discouraging content." Did you notice this? Not incorrect content, not terrorist threats, nothing like that. Not even anything that's just wrong. Just vaccine discouraging content. So if you had just posted something to Facebook that consisted of, "I don't think it's a good idea to get the vaccine yet. Why don't you wait a couple of years, see what happens, and then maybe get this shot?" If you were to post something like that, they were out to stop that. So here's the person emailing, the staffer emailing the top people at Facebook and saying, "We need guidance on taking more aggressive action against vaccine discouraging content." And they write this: "We are facing continued pressure from external stakeholders, including the White House and the press, to remove more COVID-19 vaccine discouraging content. For example, we recently shared with the White House," there's Facebook working with the White House on this, "a list of the top 100 vaccine-related posts on Facebook in the U.S. for the week of April 5th through April 11th. While authoritative information dominated the list, the White House was concerned that the number 3 post was a vaccine-discouraging humorous meme, and they called on us to delete the meme." So you have the White House, they're not just trying to get them to take down assertions of fact. They're saying take down memes, remove them, Facebook. In another April 2021 email, Nick Clegg is Facebook's president for global affairs, and he informed his team at Facebook that Andy Slavitt, a senior advisor to President Biden, was, quote, outraged that Facebook did not remove a particular post. They said this in the email: "Andy attended a meeting of misinformation researchers," didn't provide names, "organized by Rob F. on Friday, in which the consensus was that Facebook is a disinformation factory." This is the White House saying this to Facebook. "You are a disinformation factory. And that YouTube, why aren't you more like YouTube? They've made significant advances to remove content leading to vaccine hesitancy, whilst we have lagged behind." Whilst appreciative of our emphasis on authoritative vaccines, the principal focus for Andy S. and his team in the coming weeks is to reach the, quote, hardest to reach people who have a propensity to consume vaccine hesitant related content and who are not swayed by official or authoritative sources of content. Our systems, he believed, as confirmed by the researchers, feed vaccine hesitant related content to pockets of the population, and that's the problem that he wants our help to resolve, okay? So the White House is saying, make them get the jab. Facebook, we need you to convince them. Get the jab. There's no other option. They continue here. As an example, Andy Slavitt, the White House official, the senior advisor to President Biden, Andy Slavitt was, quote, outraged, not too strong a word to describe his reaction, that we did not remove this post, which was the 3rd most highly ranked post in the data set that we sent to him. Now, what is the post? Well, Jim Jordan shares this detail, a screen grab of it. Some of it's cut off, so I can't read the whole thing to you, but I know what it is. It's a meme. It's a meme. That's it. The White House was angry that an amusing meme was going viral on Facebook about how the vaccine could hurt you. Here's what it's from. It's a random account. I don't even know who this person is. Some guy named Timothy. Poor Timothy. He just shares a meme, and it says at the top of it, 10 years from now, you will be watching TV and here. And it's a meme. You may have seen it before, but it's Leonardo DiCaprio holding a beer and a cigarette, pointing at a TV like, that's the thing. That's it. Like he's got his finger straight out. I'm not even sure what the movie is. Somebody can tell me. But he's pointing straight at a TV. That's the thing. And at the bottom here, again, the meme says, 10 years from now, you will be watching TV and hear, did you or a loved one take the COVID vaccine? You may be entitled to, I assume, to compensation. It's cut off. But in other words, a big class action lawsuit's coming down the pike, and everyone's going to make a ton of money if they got the jab, right? That's the meme. That's the meme. And this was shared in April of 2021, just a couple of short months after Biden took office. So Joe Biden, Joseph Robinette Biden Oswald III, or whatever his name is, he decided that after he came into office, he and his goons were going to pressure Facebook into shutting down people who shared memes that embarrassed the administration, that took a different line on whether or not you should get the jab. How North Korean, how Chinese Communist Party are we going to get? Don't you embarrass the administration. Remember Adam Schiff? Adam Schiff was pressuring Twitter to take down posts that were embarrassing to him. You remember this? This is this impulse that they have. They're not for free speech. They're for shutting down dissent. And mockery, that's even worse. Don't make fun of me. People might not take me seriously if you make fun of me. So Jim Jordan points out they're shutting down memes. So when Clegg, the Facebook guy, countered that, quote, removing content like that would represent a significant incursion into traditional boundaries of free expression in the United States, Slavitt, the Biden official, disregarded the warning and the First Amendment, says Jim Jordan. So here's Clegg's take. He said, I countered that removing the content like that would represent a significant incursion into traditional boundaries of free expression in the U.S. But he replied, that is, Biden's henchman, Slavitt, that the post was directly comparing COVID vaccines to asbestos poisoning in a way which would demonstrably inhibit confidence in COVID vaccines amongst those the Biden administration is trying to reach. It would be very helpful if someone could please check whether this content was also available on YouTube. Andy's assumption is that YouTube would never accept something like this. So this is the Facebook guy saying, let's just check if it's on YouTube, because if it is, maybe we can justify letting it stay up. What happened next, says Jim Jordan? Well, Facebook panicked. In another April 2021 email, Brian Rice, Facebook's VP of Public Policy, raised the concern that Andy Slavitt, again, the Biden official, that his challenge felt very much like a crossroads for us with the Biden White House in these early days. So this is the pressure, you see? We've talked about this before. The government can't indirectly rob you of your rights in a way that it's not allowed to do directly, right? They can't deprive you of your free speech rights, directly or indirectly. Either way, they're trampling your First Amendment rights. And here they are, browbeating Facebook into submission to the point that you have one of Facebook's executives saying, this is a big deal. We got to be careful here. These are the early days of the Biden White House. Do we want to be on the right side of them or the wrong side? Facebook wanted to repair its relationship with the White House to avoid adverse reactions, says Jim Jordan. This is the quote, given what is at stake here, it would also be a good idea if we could regroup and take stock of where we are in our relations with the White House and our internal methods too. Jim Jordan says this wasn't the first time the Biden White House was angry that Facebook didn't censor more. According to these documents, the Biden White House demanded to know why Facebook had not censored a video from Tucker Carlson. There you go. So Facebook targeting its political opponents. I should point out this is not the first time we've heard about Facebook targeting a Tucker Carlson video. They did this apparently routinely at the behest of the Biden White House. Facebook prepped its response. To appease the Biden White House, talking points were drafted. Facebook was ready to tell the White House that it had demoted a video posted by Tucker Carlson by 50%, cut it in half, in response to the White House's demands, even though the post didn't violate any policies. Any policies. They say the post didn't violate anything. While we remove content that explicitly directs people not to get the vaccine, as well as content that contains explicit misrepresentations about vaccines, we reviewed this content in detail, and it does not violate these policies. Yet, what did they do? They gave the video a 50% demotion. A 50% demotion to prevent it from reaching a tremendous number of people who would have otherwise seen it. In July of 2021, President Biden publicly denounced Facebook and other social media platforms, claiming they were, quote, killing people by not censoring alleged misinformation. On August 2nd of 2021, Facebook admitted it was changing its policies because of pressure from the Biden White House. That day, Facebook's leadership asked misinformation policy, this is the quote inside, to brainstorm some additional policy levers we can pull to be more aggressive against misinformation. This is stemming from the continued criticism of our approach from the Biden administration. All right, more in a moment on the rest of the federal government pressure brought to bear to censor the internet and the American public. You know what? On this story alone, Biden should be impeached. On this story alone. The Biden White House pressure on Facebook to censor you was not limited to White House officials. The U.S. Surgeon General got in on the action, too, compelling Facebook to change its policies around content discussing the jabs and COVID. Facebook came up in August of 2021 with a range of policy solutions, that is, censorship solutions, to the pressure from the Surgeon General that included stuff like designating any assets that were linked to groups or pages or profiles or accounts which have been removed for COVID misinformation violations as non-recommendable to users. So if you popped a violation, sorry, your page wouldn't be recommended to anybody. There's no way anybody's going to join your group, your club. Count COVID misinformation and harm, vaccine widely debunked hoaxes, and COVID repeatedly fact-checked hoaxes towards misinformation repeat offender status. And the things go on from here. Basically, it's all the same, which is if you say something the government doesn't like, you're not allowed to speak to anyone. They will silence you. That's the Biden administration. Bunch of fascists. Coming up, Mike McCormick. The guy who used to write down the words that came out of Joe Biden's mouth when he was vice president of the United States. He's been witness to history, and he's seeing it again. We'll talk to Mike moments away.
How could there be such a big miscommunication?
I cannot even begin to explain how the Justice Department walks into that courtroom without knowing exactly what the scope of immunity or coverage is for Hunter Biden. And equally, I cannot even begin to understand how Hunter Biden's lawyers walk him into that courthouse without knowing exactly what the constraints, what the limitations of that deal are.
CNN can't understand that the Bidens are corrupt, and so is the Justice Department. A wild scene playing out yesterday in a courtroom in Delaware as finally one judge just asked a couple of questions. Judge Mary Ellen Noreika, for the moment, a hero to the country, just for saying, wait a second, you're going to give him blanket immunity from literally everything? What kind of deal is this? And why did you structure it this way? And why does this look like something I have never seen before in my entire legal career? Lots of lawyers saying that today. Amazing what happened in Delaware yesterday, and a lot more answers to come. Before we get there, though, I want to bring in Mike McCormick. He's the author of The Midnight in the Laptop of Good and Evil Substack. He's also a former stenographer for Joe Biden from 2011 to 2017. Mike, great to have you back with us, sir.
Thanks, Vince. Great to talk with you again.
This saga gets crazier and crazier. What are you thinking today as you watch the wake of that plea deal hearing yesterday?
Well, the Judge Arnieka, she's a hero. I mean, she stood up to this graft that's been going on. You know, I have a personal experience with David Weiss, that U.S. attorney in Delaware, his office. I submitted evidence that I witnessed Joe Biden committing a crime on Air Force Two in 2014 when I was a stenographer, submitted to that office. I'd never heard back from them. They've never replied. They've ignored it. And at first I thought it was the FBI, but now I'm thinking it's pretty directly his office because, you know, the IRS whistleblowers are out there and they're pointing the finger at his office, but they're not sure if it was his office or if it was Merrick Garland's directions to his office. But my experience is it was directly David Weiss's office that was standing, basically ignoring evidence that Joe Biden was in a kickback scheme with Hunter Biden with the Burisma Holdings natural gas conglomerate in Ukraine.
And you wouldn't be the first to point the finger at the U.S. Attorney's Office. The IRS whistleblowers also said that it was the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware that was constantly interfering in their investigation into the Biden family. They were told by the assistant U.S. attorney in that office that they weren't allowed to ask questions about dad or the big guy. And, of course, now we have these conflicting stories about whether or not David Weiss was actually trying to pursue charges in various districts around the country. It sure seems to me like something stinks to high heaven here, sir.
Yeah, and Fox Nation, I was just put on a documentary film they put out this week. They dive deeply into the experience of the IRS whistleblowers as they're trying to push this investigation through this office, recalcitrant office. And they had lots it's a great documentary. It's called Who is Hunter Biden, Part 4. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of interviews with the Oversight Committee headliners, and it really pulls out in timeline fashion how much resistance to justice there was out of this office during the Trump era, too, and all the way into the Biden era. And now here we are, and we have this judge sort of standing up saying, stoplight, go,
yes.
and then here we are.
Yes, and you're talking about, when we talk about David Weiss, people like to say he's Trump appointed. He was Democrat selected. The Democrat senators from Delaware picked this man, and now we're living with the consequences of that, Mike McCormick. And you,
yeah.
Go ahead, make your point.
Yeah, that's right. And it's almost like the shields are down. With this judge's inquiry, with her simple questions, the whole media shielding of the Hunter Biden, Joe Biden connection is down, and they don't know what to do. And so what comes next, we'll see. They've got Don Archer online to testify on Monday. That's in the Oversight Committee.
Yes.
We'll see. That's a huge hit if it comes through. We'll see. He's backed away from previous testimony opportunities, so we'll see.
Now, I want to remind people of what you say you witnessed. You flew to Ukraine with then Vice President Joe Biden. And my understanding, based on our prior conversations, is that you were aware of Joe Biden looking to enhance natural gas exploration in that country to the benefit of his son's wallet.
That's correct. He knew at the time, this flight was April 21st, 2014. He knew as this flight was heading into Ukraine, his son was already on the board, surreptitiously put on the board on April 18th. And they had meetings in the White House, and Devin Archer may be asked this on Monday. Did you meet with Joe and Hunter in the White House on April 16th, 2014? And if his answer is yes, Joe Biden is sunk.
And he's sunk because they'll have him dead to rights.
Yeah. I mean, he's part of he's the mastermind of this Burisma kickback scheme. That's just Burisma. There's a lot of other stuff they're going to talk about with Devin Archer. They're going to talk about the China kickback schemes. There's so much coming out now. The Democrats don't really have a good answer, and the media, their defenders in the media are left with no weapons. They've got to stand back and take it.
There's yesterday in the court hearing in Delaware, Hunter Biden admitted that he had a Chinese business partner, and of course they admitted to all of this money that was coming to him from China. I want to emphasize something, though. During a debate back in 2020 between then President Donald Trump and Joe Biden, Biden said this on the debate stage. Take a listen. Stand by. See if I can get this for you. Biden did claim that his family was not making any money from China. I'm trying to load up the audio for you because that seems important. Mike, I'll just get your reaction to it as we try and find this audio. But he did claim that there was no money flowing to him from China or his family, that only Donald Trump was making money from China.
Right. Just a typical Joe Biden lie in front of the public. Behind the scenes, there's dark, dirty secrets that are coming out now. And so we're going to find out. Devin Archer has the goods on this guy. We'll see what happens with him. I'm very curious about how this plays out.
Yeah, I'll be very interested to see. And at this point, now you have Kevin McCarthy talking about launching an impeachment inquiry. This thing can jump to the next level now.
Oh, I think impeachment is in the works. And, it's interesting because I talk about being in this Fox documentary. They interviewed me back in early June. So they've been working on this documentary for a while. So there's a bit of choreography going on here, and it's step by step, and now you have the judge's decision, and then we have Devin Archer coming out. And we're going to hear about impeachment, but there's a lot to it because China hasn't really been talked out that much. And, Devin Archer is really sort of the key witness here.
Yeah, Devin Archer is set to testify this week that it was that he heard Joe Biden on dozens of phone calls with foreign business partners, and that this was considered Hunter Biden's party trick to convince them to open their wallets.
Yeah, that's what I've read. Miranda Devine did a great column on that in the New York Post.
Yes.
So there's a lot of reporting on it. They kind of know what he says, what he's supposed to say. He keeps backing away from it. I mean, the thing with this whole situation is Joe Biden could come out and pardon Devin Archer for a crime he's about to serve time for. So there's a lot of behind-the-scenes negotiating that may be going on. That's why this is such a volatile time in the legal system right now with our president at the top of it.
Let's pick up from some of that audio back in 2020. I think I've got it here for you.
Military person, when he was going through his impeachment, testifying under oath who worked for him, said, "I did my job impeccably. I carried out U.S. policy. Not one single solitary thing was out of line. Not a single thing," number one. Number two, the guy who got in trouble in Ukraine was this guy trying to bribe the Ukrainian government to say something negative about me, which they would not do and did not do because it never, ever, ever happened. My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China. I have not had it. The only guy made money from China is this guy. He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China.
President Trump, let me ask my question to you.
But could I just one thing?
Very quickly.
His son didn't have a job for a long time, was sadly no longer in the military service. I won't get into that. And he didn't have a job. As soon as he became vice president, Burisma, not the best reputation in the world. I hear they paid him $183,000 a month. Listen to this. $183, and they gave him a $3 million upfront payment.
All right.
And he had no energy.
I'm going to let the vice president respond to that quickly, and then I need to get to a question to you.
Isn't that amazing? So that's fascinating audio. So Donald Trump actually, now we know in retrospect, was actually understating Mike McCormick the amount of money that the Bidens had received from the Burisma deal, which you're definitely more familiar with, having traveled with Biden to Ukraine. And simultaneously, there's Biden lying about his family receiving money in China.
That's right. And, as they're doing this debate, the Delaware state's attorney is stifling the investigation that had the facts out. They had the facts. The IRS guys knew what was going on right then at that point in time, and no one would let it come out. They wouldn't. It's just baffling to me how
they let an impeachment play out of Donald Trump in light of they knew the facts, and yet they let the impeachment roll.
That's right. They were investigating before the impeachment. That's correct. It's choreographed, and it is so deep and dark. It's going to take a while. It's going to take more than just an impeachment proceedings to really fully get to the bottom of it.
Mike,
we're getting to the bottom of it. We have a laptop.
Yes. Yeah, we do. So, and as you the name of your Substack, Midnight in the Laptop of Good and Evil. Mike, have you ever been this troubled by your own government?
Wow, that's a great question, Vince. I traveled with Joe Biden. I saw Joe Biden up close. I saw him do things with people that were benevolent and typical of a politician. But this is so dark, and there is so much more behind this that is so un-American. It's unbelievable. I mean, treason is something that I would say Joe Biden has committed. And I think we're going to see the proof of that pretty soon.
I wonder, I always you hesitate to even ask, but I do wonder about the safety of people like Judge Mary Ellen Noreika, who made this decision yesterday to throw the flag on this, crappy, perpetual immunity deal for Hunter. It's got to make people nervous. Once you detect that you're dealing with deeply corrupt people, it's got to make you nervous to get in their way.
That's true. But the other thing I can tell you about Joe Biden and his cohorts, they're kind of dumb. So I personally don't worry about the stuff that I talk about them because I'm just telling the truth about them.
Yeah.
But they're dumb. And that's really what the Democrats are going to have to wrestle with. The Democratic Party is going to have to decide how long we put up with a dumb, corrupt politician in the White House. And they're going to make the decision on how this plays out, I think.
Mike, do you think, just as a political matter, do you think his presidency is over? Do you think we're headed towards that now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'd be surprised if he's running for president at this time next year. I'd be shocked. And if he is, it's going to be a whitewash, whoever's against him.
Yeah, it's just amazing. I'm convinced Gavin Newsom is, getting all the suits ready, packing right now, because he's got a big feat ahead of him with Joe Biden leaving this race. We'll see how soon that actually happens. But in the meantime, Mike, thank you as always for your contributions today. Mike McCormick is the author of The Midnight in the Laptop of Good and Evil Substack. Mike, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Vince. We'll talk soon.
Great to chat with you. And, of course, Mike was a former stenographer. I always laugh at that he had to write down the words that came out of Joe Biden's mouth. Talk about the toughest job in the federal government. It's 5:49 now. Well, America's coffee company, Starbucks, decided they needed some help. And they brought in the former Attorney General, Eric Holder. They said, you can help us. And the Washington Free Beacon has a great story on this subject. They say it was 2018, 2 years before the tidal wave of diversity initiatives, remember those, unleashed by George Floyd's death. And Starbucks needed a public relations win. The coffee giant was under fire after an employee at one of its stores mistakenly called the police on two black men, prompting the company to announce a multi-phase effort to become, quote, more diverse, equitable, and inclusive. Equitable. Not equal. Equitable is what Starbucks wanted to do. Part of that effort was a series of civil rights assessments conducted by Covington and Burling, one of the top white shoe law firms. That's how you know they're good. They have white shoes in Washington, D.C., under the leadership of former Attorney General Eric Holder, a senior counsel at the firm. Holder, who would charge as much as $2,295 an hour for such work, $2,300 an hour to have the privilege of speaking to Eric Holder, barf, issued a final report in 2021 that outlined the steps that Starbucks had taken to promote, quote, equity. They included tying executive pay to diversity targets, setting spending goals for diverse suppliers, and launching a mentorship program for BIPOC employees, that is, Black, Indigenous, people of color, which Holder pressed the company to expand. Each initiative, he wrote, demonstrated the coffee maker's commitment to, quote, civil rights and equal treatment. But 1 year later, Starbucks was fending off a civil rights lawsuit over exactly the programs that Holder had blessed. The lawsuit, which is still ongoing and was filed last August by the National Center for Public Policy Research, a conservative nonprofit that is also a Starbucks shareholder, argued that the programs violate, ding, 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 non-discrimination laws, as well as the company's fiduciary duties. Okay, so you see what happened. Starbucks hires Eric Holder to make them more equitable. They wanted to say, we don't want to be racist. We need to bring in Eric Holder. And what did Eric Holder convince them to do? To become racist. Don't hire as many white people, said Eric Holder. So Starbucks nodded, and they said, okay, we won't hire as many white people. Now Starbucks is being sued for racism. It is the best, isn't it? It really is. I mean, it's not the best. You don't want it to happen at all. But if it's going to happen, couldn't happen to a better group of people. Starbucks and Eric Holder, the guy, he'll get away with it. Remember, he was held in contempt of Congress for lying to the American people and withholding documents about the death of federal agents as our border was collapsing under the Biden administration. But Eric Holder cashed in on all of his great success as a terrible government servant. And he's now making $2,300 an hour to convince big corporations that they should be more racist. They get sued, and there are no consequences for him. What kind of privilege is that? Democrat privilege? Where can I get me some of that? Good old Eric Holder. You know who else is great? Genuinely great. Not like Eric Holder. We're just making fun of him. Genuinely great is the great one, Mark Levin. Up next, right here on WMAL. Can't wait to hear what he has to say tonight.